welcome to this episode of the At Sea Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts, and this is your host as well, Dan Portnoy, guest and host and producer. You're like the guy. You're like the guy who plays for the New Orleans Saints. I think he's number 7. He can play quarterback. He also plays like wide out and running back. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Bugs Bunny first base, Bugs Bunny second base, Bugs Bunny third base.
It's Dan Portnoy. You're like that guy. There's a guy who played for the Dolphins who was that way too. He was number 11. He played when Dan Marino was there. He could play quarterback. Cordell Stewart was that way. You're like that. You're the.
Oh, I'm the Cordell Stewart.
You're the Cordell Stewart of this podcast. And they're like there's 6 people out there who are like, I remember Cordell Stewart.
Yeah. Well, I think that also means that I only get about 8 years and then I'm done.
That's not bad. Did Cordell play for 8 years?
I don't think he did.
I don't think he played. I don't think he went 8 years.
I don't think he got. Those guys always. Any guys who move around too much in the pocket, they don't last too long.
Doesn't last a long time. No, he got beat up. He was playing with a Steelers team that had Neil O'Donnell as their principal quarterback. Neil O'Donnell, who was, let's just be honest, Joe Flacco before Joe Flacco was Joe Flacco. I think they're the same quarterback. I feel not that I believe in I don't believe in reincarnation, but I do believe in sports. I think that basically the same white guy shows up every 7 to 12 years to inhabit.
Yeah, I don't.
Certain
but Neil O'Donnell doesn't have Joe Flacco money.
No, he also doesn't have Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco's got Joe Flacco money. Like he can do anything now. He's just like,
yeah.
Come in, play a playoff game, done. No problem.
Hey man.
Hi. It's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah, it's been a minute. There's the holidays and all kinds of stuff. Turned 50. All kinds of things happened.
Yeah.
You and I are walking our way through the book Sacred Strides, talking about the things, the kind of a little bit of a reading between the lines bit, and
yes.
We're continuing that journey today.
And I feel like today. Well, you're welcome. I feel like today is story time more than anything. It's really important to get our stories down because otherwise we will not understand what's happening.
Amen. Amen.
In chapter 6. So here we are in chapter 6, running with others.
Yep.
Or 90 pounds of rice and making lasting friendships. Is it true that Stavros, your friend Stavros, is a fireman now? Is that correct?
Has been.
Yeah.
Is.
Okay.
He's got 4 kids. As a fireman, he lives about a minute and 10 seconds that way.
All right. So you've been friends a long time.
Long time.
Okay. So you start this whole thing out with a very silly bunch of images. Can you give us the rundown on the Beta Breakers?
Yeah, so the Beta Breakers, for those who aren't runners and don't live on the West Coast, even if you don't live on the West Coast, the Beta Breakers is one of the oldest races in America, and it's anywhere usually between like 40 and 80,000 people run this race in San Francisco. It's a 12K or a 15K. And the joy of the race is like you run through San Francisco, which is a beautiful city, and you end down towards the San Francisco waterfront, which is a great spot. But the race is legend because people run it in costume. And I've run in a costume a few different years. But one of the first years I ran the race, there was a guy, like I said, like tens of thousands of people. And I'm at mile 3. I'm coming up to mile 3 in this race, and I hear this horrid sound. It's like, well, I can't get in my mind like what. Usually, you hear a sound, and you're like, oh, I think that might be, this might be. I can't get in my head around what it is. And as I'm jogging up, there's a man in a full suit of armor. Like an actual suit, like a big metal suit of armor with a massive steel sword, and he's clunking his way, and he's dragging this blade behind him, and it's carving a divot, and there's sparks flying behind him. Like, that's the Beta Breakers. There was a time, they still do some of this. People run the race completely naked. There was like one of the things, yes, like naked.
So they just had socks on?
Just shoes and socks.
Oh, just shoes. Because you're the most naked actually with just shoes on.
It's that's
You're more
you're
naked
more naked
than
if you
you
have
are
something fit.
naked. Yeah.
That's
You
actually
just
true.
have shoes on. You're just like, "Whoa, that guy's naked."
That's not true. So,
Yeah.
that's a Beta Breakers is a kick, and so every year I run the race every year. It's a race I used to do with my dad, so there's a little nostalgia there for me. Um, this past year, yeah, 2 years ago, what the race I ran that that shows up in this chapter, I ran the race in a full zebra onesie. It was a zebra onesie I got I've got probably 20, 30 costumes, like, up in my attic that I'm like, "Yeah, I buy Halloween stuff for my kids." It's not for my kids. It's for me. I have a zebra onesie. I have, a unicorn onesie. So I ran this race a couple years ago in the zebra onesie, and as I it's as I don't remember what mile I'm at. There's another person in another zebra onesie up in front of me, and that person's running with a unicorn and a giraffe. And so I eventually catch up with them, and we run this race together for a little while. And we're all of us parents. Like everyone's a parent in this little group of onesied pajama joggers, and the sort of the undercurrent to the narrative is like those moments where you end up running alongside people in parallel, and like the goofiness of life, they only happen if you get in the race, and they only happen if you show up in the like that doesn't happen for me if I don't show up in a pajama zebra onesie to run 9 miles. Like I have to commit to the 9 miles. I have to commit to looking like an idiot, and then I find out that there are other people who all are also looking like idiots who are also running 9 miles. And I think that's how lasting friendships work is you get in the game, you do the stuff that's in your imagination, you take a bunch of risks, and then you run your race at your pace, and you find yourself running alongside people who are a lot like you, have similar values, have similar passions and similar energies. So that's the story, and that's the story, that's the setup for the chapter.
Yeah, and then then we find out just hearing that when you're now we're out of college because you've kind of been doing this chronologically, right? Like you
Yes.
were talking about in college and then
Yep.
all of your coffee runs and this, that, and the other thing. And then now we're out of college and you're pulling it down financially.
Yes, killing it.
That was just killing it. $650 to $800. What year is this?
So I graduated in 96. So this is like
Okay, so
90,
this
like 97, 96, 97.
yeah.
Coming up
So
on
even for
1998.
97, this is a little bit of
This is
money.
not a lot.
This is a tiny amount of
It's
money.
not a lot of money. I was on Young Life staff, and being on Young Life staff meant and still means you raise your own money. And if you don't raise your own money, then most of the
There
time,
you are.
like you don't have any money. And so
Yeah.
because I don't know a lot of people who I do know some people who do like fundraising, but I'm not on that list. I like fundraising for other people. I'll say that. I'm
Yes.
happy to help fundraise. I don't like raising my own money.
Yes. Yes.
So I
It's
was bad
difficult.
at it.
There's a
And
weird pride thing.
there's a yes, very much so. There's definitely a mental block there. So I was pulling in $650 a month, sometimes $800 a month, and that was all I was making. And part of how I became friends with Stavros, who plays a major role in this chapter, is he too was on Young Life staff and was only pulling in so much money. And this is what I mean is like I wanted to do I wanted to do Young Life. I wanted to do ministry. I wanted to hang out with kids. I wanted to be like my Young Life leader. That was the vision I had for life. Is like this person spends their time, their energy, and their resources just loving kids, and like like helping kids enter into like kingdom conversations and talk about Jesus, and like I want to do that. And the price I paid for that is I had to raise my own money, and I was bad at it, and so I didn't have a whole lot of money. But I decided to do it anyway. So I'm like on this adventure. I committed to the 9 miles of running a race and doing youth ministry. And as I do that, I run into this person who was running the same race at the same pace with similar passions. And so we became roommates because he's like, I'm only making like $800 to $900 a month too. So we could afford a place together because we were on this adventure together.
So I mean, what are we looking at rent wise here? Like what's the rent
At the
that you're
time,
splitting?
the place was $400 a month. So I put in two and Stav put in two, and We
That
had
is very budget friendly
it's
comparatively
very
then.
very budget friendly. Now, the trick with the place, and I've told the
Mhm.
story a lot, and I love telling the story. The trick with the place is the reason it was $400 a month. Even at the time, that was cheap. Even at the time, it's way cheap now. You can't get a room for
Yeah.
$400. Heck,
No.
you can barely get hotels for $400. So,
Seriously.
it was the basement of a house built on a hill. So,
The on a
there,
hill is already very like, "Why did you tell me that?"
yeah, because it was 15 feet deep and 55 feet long. We called it the bowling alley. One door in, one window, one outlet. No running water. If we were going to use the restroom or wash our hands, use a sink, any sort of anything that had like this is the basics to human life in America in the 1990s, we had to leave, go outside and up into the house. That I can't remember the person's name who owned the place. We had to go to the landlord's like kitchen or use the bathroom upstairs. That was it. That was our bathroom was in her living room. So we had to leave our place, go outside, up the stairs, like into her door, and use like her kitchen or her restroom. That was our place.
That was off her living room. It wasn't in her living room. There wasn't like a toilet seat like in the center of the living room.
Well, that yes, like it was like
Yes, no.
no, it wasn't like in the middle of the living room, but like the bathroom was located adjacent to like next to the living room.
A
So
true throne room.
yes, so that was part of why it was as affordable as it was.
Wow,
It
yeah.
was it was kind of a janky little place.
Just some extra cash for the landlord. I get it.
I would assume not a lot of extra
Yeah,
cash, and
yeah.
we were very
No,
thankful for it. Like we
sure.
had no complaints whatsoever.
Sure. So then you guys are out somewhere and you meet a guy named Don.
So Don Raymond is still a
Wow.
really generous uh, donor and support to Young Life here in the San Francisco Bay region. And at the
Cool.
time, uh, he there was the as Young Life staff persons. This is true a lot of the country. Young Life will try to set you up with fundraising opportunities and like raise money for the area, which helps you. And one of the annual like big fundraising pushes was this golf tournament. I'm not a golf person, never have been. I don't know golf. And so people who are like actually great at fundraising and had fundraising relationships would be out on the course, playing with donors. Stav and I, because we're not golf people and don't have golf friends, we're in the clubhouse like just schlepping sodas. And Dawn pulls Stav and I aside and says, "Hey man, um, I've heard about your work and really proud of you. Love the work you're doing, and I'd love to support you." And we know the legend, like the legend of this guy because he supports Young Life and has been for a long time. So I'm thinking like this is going to be like a huge like he's going to write a big old check. We leave. He's like, follow me outside. So we follow him outside, and I think to myself, like, okay, here we like it's a check significant enough that he doesn't want to write it in front of other people. So we walk through the parking lot. We get to his car, and instead of going to his car door to go get a checkbook, he opens up the trunk. So now I think there's probably a suitcase full of cash, and he's going to hand us a suitcase full of untraceable cash. It's a big donation. And instead, there's a 90-pound sack of rice in the back of his car in the trunk, and he says, "Here you go, guys. I don't know how long this has been sitting around, but it's yours now." And I was like, "Well, two issues. One, I don't think if you're going to give someone food, you should tell them it's old. Like that's just kind of like just
Agreed.
protocol, just general social protocols. Here's this really old food. Enjoy." Secondly, we really did we had one outlet and no running water, and now we have 90 pounds of rice. We had to go buy a rice cooker for like 40 bucks in order
So
to
kind
if
of
so
40 bucks down.
yeah, so if you have to buy something in order to use the gift you were giving, you got screwed. So he gives us the rice, but like as goofy as all that is, the reality was we were so stoked because having to at the time having to think about like where our next meal was coming from, like having a like meal plan, like outside of just being like young men in our 20s and not being great at meal planning. We weren't bad at meal planning, but like it was great to know like what are you gonna have for for food. We have
Mhm.
rice, so we had rice twice a day for like a
With
year
everything.
with everything. It was great because it settled that issue for us. It was super simple. There's rice. We have a rice cooker. We're eating rice, and we would buy soups to add to the rice from the dollar store. Go to the dollar store. We would buy like $1 soups, and that was it. And I loved how simple that was. And again, here's a person that I'm rooming with who is totally happy with just eating rice and rice with soup because he's running the same race I'm running. He's doing the same things I'm doing. He's willing to make the same sacrifices I'm making. And all those again because I was running my race at my pace and here is someone else doing the same thing.
Mhm. Yep. And then, I mean, that is it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of like, hey, it always cracks me up when people are like, "Hey, I don't like this drink anymore. Do you want it?" It's kind of like that 90
Yes.
pounds of rice. Hey, this
Yes.
rice is old. Here it is. You can
So
have it.
it was a
I
little bit
don't.
like that.
You're really underselling this to me. You're really underselling them to me.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, when you're going through that, which like I don't know, all of this sounds terrible to me now, but I think if I knew like post college, you're like, yeah, okay, that's what I'm doing. It's nobody. How funny that is. That like,
Yeah. Well, our
I,
comforts and expectations change over time. It was, and I preach this a lot to folks in their 20s. Like now is the time to do those kinds of things, and like to do like the sell everything you have and take the trip, or like take the big risk and live like super duper simply so that you can do
Mhm.
the stuff you're wanting to do. Like you won't have that same option in your 30s and your 40s. You get into a relationship, you get married, you have kids, you have a career. You can't do what I did, which was like I sold everything. I sold most of my clothes. I sold my bed. I was sleeping on. I had a Sub-Zero sleeping bag from REI and a floor mat, and that was how I slept for 3 years because
Wow.
like I could get money from my bed, and it meant I didn't. I was living so simply, and that was a
Mhm.
time in my life I could. So when you can do it, because you don't get that chance later on, not without some major sacrifices.
Yeah, that's how I felt
And
when I
when
moved to
and when
LA.
you do that,
Yeah.
you find out what your actual core
Mhm.
values are because you're not tangled
Yeah.
up in some sort of systemic like this is how you're supposed to live. Like what do I really care about? I found out more about what I actually cared about because I wasn't caring about things that societally I was supposed to care about. Like,
Right.
having a bed of my own. Like I slept on the floor. Like having an apartment that you could bring girls home to. It's like, yeah, I don't really care. Like I'm not. I'm living in this trash joint and I'm sleeping on the floor because I want to be spending my time and my energy like hanging out with teenagers, talking about
Mhm.
Jesus, like learning music, like hanging with my friends. Like that's what I wanted to be doing, and so I could live the life I wanted to live because I wasn't caught up in other value systems. And because that was true, the friends I made in that season continue to be the truest friends in my life because I know what they're about and they know what I'm about. And there's
Well,
no there's no veil here.
well, there was also no way for them to be like, "Well, I really like Justin for his car,"
no, no
or
one,
"I
no,
like
no,
for all
just
his stuff that he has that it really helps out my
that's
life."
actually true. We just like hanging out at your place. No, no one liked
And
hanging at my place. We'll see you at the Denny's.
yeah,
That's where we hang out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So then you guys, you tell a story here of something like you're already in a ridiculous situation, and then you amp it up because Stav is
Oh,
dressed a certain way here.
oh
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's now
Oh, I
got
love this
what
story.
is he wearing?
So, um, if you're not familiar with Young Life culture or Young Life stuff, it's like youth group. Well, there's an element of Young Life it's like youth group or like a youth gathering for kids that don't go to church. And so my club, they called it club, and my club with high school kids was originally on like Tuesday nights and then Stavs was on Wednesday nights, and or on Thursday nights, and we had committed to making sure that like we were like hanging out together, because that's one of the things I teach in the book is insofar as there are dark forces in the world, one of the things those dark forces will do is try to pull you away from things that are actually life giving to you. It's like the stuff Pressfield talks about with regards to resistance. Is like if you have bad friends, if you have friends that aren't good for you, nothing's going to get in the way of you spending time with them. Like if you commit to crap that's like not good for your life, like your schedule's going to open up. But the minute you commit to anything, and I could read the piece from Pressfield, but like the minute you commit to anything that like adds value to your life, like resistance is going to show up and try to keep it from happening. So we committed to like not letting the business of life steal our relationship entirely. So we were doing dinner pretty regularly on Wednesday nights, and then as happens, this is part of the resistance. It's rarely like a bad thing that shows up. Like my club night had to move to Wednesday nights, and so did Stav's, and so like dinner got difficult on this particular Wednesday night. I came home and it was Stav's turn to cook. I got back to the place and he had just gotten home. He was a little bit late. He had come home from club, and at his youth group club thing, he had played a character, yeah, as happens in youth group culture. He had like played a character at club. So he's still wearing what he was wearing when he was playing the character. He's got like those duck hunting waders, like the big rubber waders that come up to, right under your chest. He's underneath. He's got a wrestling singlet, and he has goggles on and one of those hats with the propeller on the top. And he's got the rice cooker, and he's like mixing in sun-dried tomatoes into the rice. Which, well, those we were splurging. We went and bought like a $6 can of of sun-dried tomatoes. It was very fancy, and because he's wearing something, I'm just going to join him. So I go to the closet, and in the closet there was like the other pair of pants. I had two pair of pants. There was my other pair of pants, which was purple. I had jeans, and then I had a purple pair of pants. There were two collared shirts, and a bunch of t-shirts, like 5 t-shirts, and then this duct tape onesie thing. So it was like a whole body outfit. It was made entirely of duct tape. So I put on this duct tape outfit and then the duct tape helmet that comes with it. And so we sit down and we're having dinner together. Him with his propeller cap and the wrestling singlet, and me in a duct tape outfit. At some point, Stavros says, "We're all dressed up with nowhere to go." And it was like the thing you say. It's just kind of like a little cliche, but it sparked in us this imaginative, like, well, what if we did have somewhere to go? So we left, got in the car, and started driving. Didn't have anywhere to go because, shocking, neither one of us was dating. I know that's going to come as a surprise with all the
Wait,
cash we had
you
and all the
oh, you
style
guys
we
had so
had.
much to offer.
We had so much to offer to women. So we're driving. We don't know where we're going to go. And as we pass under the overpass, the 242 overpass in Concord, we see this gleaming light in the not so distant distance, and Stav says, "Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a carnival in town?" And it turns out that the gleaming light was in fact a carnival. We pulled into the lot, and instead of driving into the regular lot, we pulled to the employee like gate, and the security guy, just waved us in because we were in
Yeah, I did.
outfits. So
Yeah, I did.
so we're now walking around this carnival. Uh, we're taking pictures with people. Like people be like, can my kids take? So we start charging money, and we left with like $295.
Dang.
And again, that's like that kind of adventure is available if you're running at the same pace. Like those things don't just happen. And more to the point, you don't just make those things happen. Like those are things that like happen in lockstep with people with whom you're living a life at your pace with your values. Those kinds of adventures happen because we've already made decisions about how we're living our lives, and now we're running in parallel with folks.
Now, but so when you look back on those times, do you look at them fondly, or do you? I mean, like, were you miserable most of the time, or are you just like, it's not that big important, it's not that important, everything's it's no big deal.
Honestly, like, um, it was. There was very little misery. I mean, there were definitely there were hard things going on for sure. I mean, I lost, I lost friends, I lost kids to drug and alcohol abuse. Stav lost his mom, I lost my dad. Like there were hard things happening. But our chosen circumstances, we weren't entangled by, again, like, expectations, and it set us free to actually enjoy life. I look back on those years fondly, and those really set those years, the way we were living and the kinds of friendships I had set a tone. Like, I know now things I would not have known if I would have been a more entangled person, and if I had friendships that were, I mean, you were telling a joke earlier, but, like, if I had more friendships that were more transactional, if most of my
Mm,
core friendships were more transactional, and I did have a place that was really cool, and I couldn't tell the difference between my true friends and my like, I know what it feels like to have a true friend, and, like, to go through stuff with that friend, and to share in values with that friend, to share in adventures with it. Like, I know what a great friendship feels like because I
right.
had one, as opposed to the way it happens for way too many of us is we get into our 40s and 50s and we look up and we're surrounded by transactional relationships and
Yeah.
don't know what we don't know what it would feel like to have a friendship that wasn't predicated on some form of use and transaction, and or we don't know that we have the time and the energy to go, like, figure that out anymore. And so we just kind of quit and we give in to isolation and loneliness. I'm deeply
Hmm.
thankful for the years I spent making $650 and choosing to do the stuff that I really wanted to do with my life. Like, I wanted to be doing youth ministry. That's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be spending all my time and energy doing that. I wasn't interested in dating. I wasn't interested in, like, chasing dollars. I wanted to do youth ministry and I wanted to live simply. And as I did that, I found myself running alongside people who shared my values, shared my passions, and shared my adventures. And now I know what it
Yeah.
looks like to live in a community like that.
Right. Right. And that's really good. It's funny how both transactional and convenience is the other one that
True.
like, oh well, we live in the same neighborhood. I mean, it's so funny. Like LA's so terrible for convenience that you could meet someone that you really vibe with, but they live in too far a neighborhood, even though it's really only 10 miles. It's like, I'm never gonna see you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Like
Yeah.
it's so terrible. I actually met a guy like that in Portland. I was like, "Oh, cool, you live in LA?" And he was like, "Yeah, I live on the west side." And I was like,
Oh, I'll
"Oh,
never
okay,
see
I live
you.
in Pasadena." And everybody went, and it was so funny because the group we were with, they were like, "What happened? What just happened?" Because we were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and then we are like, "Oh," and then "What happened?" I said, "Well, we just realized that we're more likely to see you guys again in
In
here in
Portland.
Portland than we are to actually see each other in LA because." It's just going to be the way it goes.
Because
They were
10
like,
mi- because
you're
10 miles
insane to
might as well
me.
be a
And I was
flight.
like, yeah, might as well. Oh, is that
Yes.
is that 3 hours to get to you? Yeah, yeah. Sorry,
Roughly.
can't do it.
Yep.
Can't do it, man. One way. No thanks.
Yeah.
So, for your friendship and your things like Stav and even Young Life, because and it is funny to me how like because I think I first met you not too long after this. Because when did that first record go for you in your timeline?
That would have been 99. Was that first record was
Oh, so this is
99.
just a couple years, just a
Yeah,
couple
it was
years
a couple
before.
years after that. Yeah,
Wow.
I left
Okay.
I left Young Life Staff in 98 to chase the rock and roll thing.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. And then the tour then was the following year.
it was.
Got
It
it.
was that spring. I
Got it.
dropped the record, I think, in July or August of 99, and I'd have to look. Might have been 98. Nope. Yeah, it was 99. Dropped the record in August of July or August 99, and then left on tour for the first time in September of 99.
Hmm. Um, how do you? I mean, okay, so not all of us can just sell our bed and sell all our stuff and live on the
Mhm.
floor and eat rice with a person who's also decided to do all these
Unless
things.
you're still in your 20s, and then this is the time that this is the
Then
time to
you
do
should
that.
definitely do
You
it.
should
Just walk out the door
do it
and
now.
do
Do
like
it
a
now.
easy rider thing where
Do
you
it
take off
now.
your watch and you
I'm
just
all
throw
for it.
it.
I'm all for
And
it.
yeah, yeah.
Totally.
So how do we further derive meaning
Yeah.
from our friendships and our relationships that are or how can we be intentional?
Yeah.
How can I derive more, because it's not like somebody's going to walk up to you and be like, you know what,
Hey, let's
man,
be
I need
true
to have more
friends.
meaning. Yeah,
Yes.
that's not going to be a thing. Unless you do it. I mean, you could do it and then they're like, wow, this is so weird, this is
Yeah,
happening.
so there are two
um
pieces here for me, which will parlay into a few others. The one is, I mean, it's kind of the ethos of this chapter says it, and I write it this way in the book. If you want to live arm in arm with solid people who share your values, don't chase friendship. Like instead of doing like I need to go make some new friends. Like that's the fix. That's what I think the fix is. Like I'm feeling lonely or I'm feeling detached. I need to go make new friends and kind of go look around and examine. So my flip is this: instead of chasing friendship, instead choose good, meaningful work and then work hard at it. So in other words, like rearrange my own passions and tap into the stuff that like I'm wanting to do. And by good, meaningful work, what I mean is like stuff that I consider like that's good work. That's what I want to be doing. It doesn't have to mean like go work at a soup kitchen. Unless that's your passion, then go work at the soup kitchen. So
yeah.
instead of chasing friendship, choose good, meaningful work and then work hard at that work. And then give that season some time. And after some time, you look up and it's very likely you'll find yourself surrounded by people who are running your race, running a similar race at a similar pace with similar values and expectations and making similar sacrifices. That's the thing. The mission and work tend to galvanize our adult relationships. And so instead of like trying to attach ourselves to people and then explain and like implement all our meaning and work, like chase chase meaning, chase like a valuable life. Like how do you want to spend yourself? We've talked about what I mean by work. How do you want to be spending yourself in the world? How does your soul want to express itself in the world? Do that with and push the pedal to the floor. And as you do that, then you're going to look up and find people who are living more like you. I'm not saying it's impossible to just jump on apps and meet people and stuff works out. I'm sure it does. My take is I think the fix for a lot of the loneliness problem in America has less to do with just like randomly creating community, but instead like chasing value, chasing meaning, and then allowing our relationships to be predicated on the shared values we discover with those we're doing that work with. The trick with creating community is often that like we'll get people together and then we're trying to figure out what to do to hold this group together. But a
Right.
shared mission and a shared set of values and a shared set of passions naturally bind people together. I end up in relationship with folks that maybe like on some social level, like I don't really click with or it's hard to talk, but I'll get over the communication piece because we're focused on like this project, and now I'm actually developing a real relationship and it's not just based on like I like you as a person. It's like, oh, I can learn to like you as a person, which by the way, even with people you really like a lot, eventually you have to learn to like them as a person again anyways. And so
Right.
that's the one piece is like chase meaning, chase value, do work that matters to you instead of trying to make friendships. And the second piece is once those friendships are established, the steps go like this. Circumstances will put you in a room with great people. So change your circumstances. Change the things that circumstantially put you in different rooms. Circumstances put you in a room with good people. Intentionality will bind you together. So once you have those friendships, that's the thing that I did. That it was just like this tiny little bit of wisdom in my otherwise moronic 20s was like, this is a friendship I know that I value. We intentionally set aside dinner once a week. Like we made plans. So instead of thinking that like friendships will just naturally continue to happen, resistance will come and steal everything from you that is valuable to you. So once you have something that's of value, then like get intentional about it. Once you've established a new set of circumstances for yourself, you come in contact with people that you really like, then you get intentional. In the long run, circumstances, intention, and then forgiveness. Forgiveness is the thing that binds relationships together long term. Your your circumstances will change, like your passions will shift. the plans you've made in your intentionality, like sometimes those will dissolve, but in the long run, learning to forgive, and we don't have enough time on this episode to do the whole thing on forgiveness, but learning to be a forgiving person, when circumstances change, when your intentionality falters, when everything else falls apart, it is long-term forgiveness that actually binds people together. And it has been our inability to forgive one another that actually has been like the poison pill that has led to the kind of loneliness we're experiencing here. It's a lack of shared mission for sure, but it's also that even with people we're sharing life with, when the times have come when we no longer see eye to eye, we just have lacked culturally and interpersonally the desire, much less the skill, to actually forgive. So that's my long diagnostic for friendship.
Yeah, and I think that's only exacerbated by COVID-19, really.
Yes.
Through that, just
absolutely
times 100. That just
yes,
big time.
Yeah.
Well, I think you said it pretty great. I think that's a great stopping point for
Amen.
Today.
All right. Dan, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the At Sea Podcast. If you're liking this, which I would assume you are because it's a kick, the book is called Sacred Strides, and it is available through Hearts and Minds Books from my friend Byron. Just go to heartsandmindsbooks.com, or you can jump to Amazon and click and it'll show up. It's Kindle. I read the book. If you like audio, I think you'll dig it. Well, until next time.